after the race, I was up here in New York at the Drake, and somebody called me from Newsweek in the morning and said, "How do you feel about being fired from CBS?" I said, "Who are you calling?"
But in this case, like on the brochure here, that for the Sibling, Rivalry, and the Social Satire, we just, on passing, it said abruptly canceled. I always like to correct that. Both Dick and I feel very strongly about this. That we were never canceled. We were fired. And it's really important. There's a definition. There's a great many. It's the appropriate to be canceled.
That's legal.
It's part of the process of shows being popular or unpopular. Their stands. But being fired was a definitive statement on the power of the show had at that time. Even though, as we look in hindsight, not so powerful.
I think it was arrogant on their part to illegally fire us, and it was illegal. We took 3 years to get to court, and we won on every issue. But Tom,
I was very upset, and I became.
You were at the NAB convention.
The National Association, yeah, the National Broadcasting is.
He was getting very politically involved.
I was going to the FCC. I was going to become a lay expert on FCC and NAB rules and all this, and they saw me coming, and.
Uh-oh.
And when Nixon got in, was elected, we were about 5 weeks after his inauguration, we were fired.
You think there was a...
Absolutely.
It was at the Watergate hearings that came out.
Then he says, let's put a list together, huh?
They worked with us, and then the enemy's list was partly conceived from...
Let me finish the thought, though, to that real direct question was, yes, I was very upset, and so upset the fact that I traveled around with the tapes under my arm, into Canada and to wherever I could show it to, anybody would watch it. And I lost my sense of perspective. And satire, real satire is satirizing not the content but the style. That's effective satire. I started getting involved in content and too much, and I got passionate, and I lost my sense of humor for about 3 years until I saw Jane Fonda on The Tonight Show. I said, that's what I'm missing. I'm missing a sense of humor, and it did change my...
You saw when someone else was missing it, it was apparent.
Yeah. You did the sitcom, then you did the variety show. Do you feel you could work in sitcom again if...
All we needed was an audience. The reason
audiences.
The first sitcom was ineffective because we didn't have an audience. I'm more like Jack Benny. Jack Benny's his films weren't very good, but he's always worked with an audience. I feel, Dickie and I both feel audience tension. And that's where our timing comes from, is a live audience we can release. And even Gilda Radner, I think, had that same kind of, she was a live performer, and her film work was not as effective as when she had an audience and feel that tension.
I'm interested in your political activities. When did they begin, and have they continued, and what forms do your activism take? Does your activism take today?
I was always been a...
I'm addressing you. Forgive me. I don't know. I get the impression
I don't know
that
anything about it. Tommy does all my political stuff. I pull the strings.
Oh, I see.
That's not true, but it sounded great at the time.
I was never politically active, only in the sense that it reflected some social changes that were happening at the time. We were a product of the venue time frame that we were in, which was the 60s, and great change were taking place on the streets everywhere. We happened to have a show I reflected, and our writers, who were all young, 22, 23, 24, were all progressive, and my political activism only was reflected in the social consciousness of the show. I was not a member of any party. I wasn't active. Even to this day, when I vote, if I don't know the person who is running and have a strong opinion about the candidate, I vote for the libertarians or the progressive or anything to take away from the two-party system.
It's not quite true, though. He has campaigned for people who are sure to lose. I mean, after he knows they have no chance of winning, he might do something for them.
I did campaign. I campaigned for McGovern. There was a couple of times I got out there and did some things.
Yeah.
I stayed progressive.
Did you campaign for Dukakis?
I didn't campaign for any of the, in this recent, I voted.
I personally don't like celebrities coming out and using their celebrity for it. I think if someone's stupid enough to think if a celebrity likes a guy, they should vote for him. I don't think it's
I disagree with
I don't think it's a very intelligent person.
I think our show was political satire when it did touch, maybe 5 minutes of it. Out of that hour would be, or the 50 minutes was dealing in any kind of satire. And today it's difficult I want to make this statement, satire today is very hard to do because we're all so cynical now. We've all been revealed, and we expect most of these people to be crooks, and we
We're
know
not
it
surprised
already.
when we find it out.
So it's very, very difficult, and you're not seeing many people do satire because to have great satirists, there must be kind of a naivete in the audience to have that function. And Dick and I would love to be more effective as
Created the
satirists.
friction with CBS.
Yes, and also the whole thing was blown out of proportion. I really enjoyed the great energy around the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour, but in reality, in hindsight, when we get it clear from it, because we were in the center of it, we didn't feel it then, but looking back in hindsight, it was blown out of proportion. What we did was so unique at the time in primetime television to call the things as we saw them and criticize the government and its policy in Vietnam was just unheard of at that time. You could do it in drama, but you couldn't do it as Tom and Dick Smothers, and we were not hiding under different characters. We were not Archie Bunker. We were Carol O'Connor he was doing as Archie Bunker. Smothers Brothers doing as the Smothers Brothers. And for some reason, the live sense of videotape and us saying and our writers writing what we put on was a mild Saturday Night Live, very mild. But it was very important at the time because everybody's passion was strong. Everybody cared a great deal, so it reflected the power was much stronger. One that we felt very strongly about was a piece that Belafonte did, a combination of his Calypso songs put against the background of the Democratic riots in the Democratic Convention in 1968. And we had film footage and him singing against it, and they pulled the whole hunk out. It was 11 minutes just about, and put in a political commercial for Nixon. I found that.
It's true, yeah, they did. The funniest one was Elaine May from Nicholson May. She was a great writer. They did a sketch that she wrote completely for her and Tom, where they were censors coming into a room like this to watch a film to see if it was appropriate for the American public. And they have a, there's two skits. They didn't get shown at all. One was they got very passionate with each other, and the other one they said this word breast is inappropriate. It's a dinner scene. I mean, how can you say breast at the table?
My heart beats wild in my breast. You're going to take out the word breast.
She says, let's substitute arm. I mean, that's acceptable. Arm's a good...
No, wrist.
My
pulse beats wild in my wrist.
Anyway, they had no sense of humor on this. The censors cut it out, and the
real censors censored it.
The real censors censored it out, and then it was reprinted in totality in the New York Times. There was about 5 or 6 columns of this censored piece. I mean, it's silly.
How did the Yo-Yo Man concept?
Bring it out.
Well,
we want the Yo-Yo Man.
It's that well.
Let Tommy set it up and.
Anyway, Mason Williams, who with a retrospective of the Smothers Brothers, the name Mason Williams is so important. It's probably the most. He was and still is, but at that time was a conscience, the moral conscience. It was a man who I dealt with constantly. 2 of us, very naive and very young, taking the comedy hour. He was the guy. We'd read the script and say, that's bullshit. That's crap. And I'd come back and say, this is not acceptable. I don't like this. We're going to write this out. He was a man who wrote about the censors. He was a man who was highly offended by the stupidity of most television programs. He was one who tried to raise the level. He also brought us a song. Most of the material we've done has been
good stuff,
processed and brought to us and through the process. And the Yo-Yo song was brought. Rick Kuna wrote a song. A friend of his, and he brought it. He said, this would be a good song for you. And it reminded us of the times we used to do the yo-yo, and I started doing the yo-yo. And then Mason Williams wrote a beautiful philosophy about what the yo-yo means. And I'll do a few tricks.
But if you do around the world,
but more than that, finish this thought that the yo-yo and the yo-yo song revitalized the Smothers Brothers act, our nightclub act, and it was kind of the centerpiece for our traveling nightclub show, and pretty soon it started defining itself. I kept working on the yo-yo and running into other yoists who had great other skills, and we call them yoists. And this is the essence of yoing is to being able to make it spin and perfectly and come back. And it's classical mechanics using gravity. It's stored kinetic energy in a rotating
One of
mass.
these yo-yos went up in the space shuttle, and to see how it worked in without gravity.
Zero gravity.
It doesn't work well.
You
It won't
can't
sleep.
make it sleep. Okay, you can call
But
them
the
out.
philosophy of, basically the philosophy of yo-yos are like around the world, and we live our lives like the planets. And in the universe, they're spinning around in their orbit, and that's what we all do with our lives. We're spinning around, going, always moving.
It is amazing. So in reality, I thank Mason once again, and he brought so many songs to us, and also was our moral character, and who was the one who was most offended, and reminded me to be offended when things were not ethical, or to do as much as we could to make them correct and morally righteous. And we should all have friends like that. And I think a lot of you people here tonight think the same way, have the same emotions and feelings we have. And it's a liability to remain ethical. And you take your risks when
Well, it's
you're
like
ethical.
to get at that point there, Tom, I don't want to interrupt you, but it's like 20 years ago when Tommy mentioned that we were fired, you know. We look back now with the perspective of time. You know, we're older, we're more mature, we have the same convictions like you all have.
But I'm still pissed off.
Still pissed off. but he's cool. He's cool about it. He's cool about it.
Okay, I'll just do it. Here's rock. I know this has nothing to do with the Museum of Broadcasting. One of these days, one of our dear friends named Barney Akers, who was one of the original demonstrators for Duncan back in the early days, passed away just last week, and it was a great loss. But before he did, we had him on our show, and we have some wonderful video on him doing some of these wonderful tricks that have not even been seen yet. And we missed getting to him a little sooner and being able to sit and talk with him and reminisce and record it, because he was such a collector of it and such a bringer of joy. But
It's ironic that the yo-yo is saving our career because it's symbolic of our whole career. It's been up and down.
Up and down. And Eiffel Tower, which always amazes people, because it seems like the yo-yo is... and man, the flying trapeze, if I make it, is always amazing. Even for me. There. Whoops. And here's the ending. This is kind of like a little thing that sometimes it works, and
It's called blast off.
you get the idea.